What if I told you that in the middle of a war zone, in one of the most strategic and critical waterways on Earth, Iran has quietly granted a safe passage for Indian ships? Not for the United States, not for Europe, but for India. At a time when missiles and drones are flying around, ships are being attacked, and global oil and gas supplies are under threat, India, along with just 4 other countries, have secured a safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran has made a rare exception for its close allies and key partners that includes just 5 countries: Russia, China, Iraq, Pakistan, and India. Now pause for a second, because this is not just diplomacy, this is influence, this is trust. And it raises a politically explosive question: who deserves the credit? Is this a diplomatic masterstroke by the Modi government? Or is this the result of 70 years of groundwork laid by previous governments? Or worse, have we misunderstood how Indian foreign policy actually works? Let's break it down in this short video through an unbiased and fact-based analysis. See, India securing passage from Iran during a volatile conflict is not routine. It is a signal that Iran continues to see India as a country worth accommodating even when tensions with the West are at their peak. Under PM Modi, India has pursued a foreign policy that is best described as multi-alignment with strategic clarity. That is, India will engage with multiple partners irrespective of their mutual differences in order to protect its core national interests. So India has strengthened its partnership with the United States in defense and technology, deepened ties with Israel in security and intelligence, expanded its engagement with Gulf Sunni powers for energy security, investments, and to safeguard the interests of the 10 million Indian diaspora. At the same time, India has managed to preserve a working relationship with Iran for connectivity and sea access. This balancing act is not easy, and it becomes even more complex during a conflict. Despite the ongoing tensions involving Iran, India has avoided direct condemnation, consistently called for de-escalation, and maintained diplomatic communication channels. India has also ensured the safety of its shipping and energy interests without making loud political statements. This is not passive diplomacy, this is active restraint. And yes, this moment reflects the Modi government's ability to navigate a deeply polarized geopolitical environment. However, to fully understand this outcome, one must also confront an uncomfortable phase in recent history when India-Iran relations were visibly strained. In 2019, India-Iran relations faced a serious disruption after Donald Trump withdrew from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, also known as the Iran nuclear deal.
The United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
The United States reimposed crippling sanctions on Iran, targeting its oil exports and financial networks. India, which had been one of the largest buyers of Iranian crude oil, decided to completely zero out oil imports from Iran, reportedly under pressure from the Trump administration. This decision was widely seen as aligning with American interests, even though it was framed as a pragmatic adjustment to global constraints. The consequences were immediate and significant. Iran retaliated by excluding India from parts of the Chabahar railway project, which India had earlier helped conceptualize as a strategic gateway to Afghanistan and Central Asia. Iranian leaders, including the Ayatollah, began to interfere with India on internal issues such as Kashmir, the abrogation of Article 370, and domestic developments like the anti-CAA protests. This shift was not driven by religious ideology alone. See, historically, Iran's approach on the Kashmir issue has been linked to how well India balanced its ties with Iran and the Gulf Sunni powers and Israel. And I will explore this in detail in a short while. But coming back to 2019, the friction between India and Iran was evident, and the change in Iran's tone reflected a deeper geopolitical concern that India was drifting too close to US and Israel. In international relations, perception shapes policy, and Iran's perception of India had altered, and the relationship had entered a phase of distrust. To understand why Iran still chose to accommodate India today, one must look beyond recent tensions and examine the long arc of India-Iran relations. See, India and Iran share civilizational ties rooted in culture, trade, and people to people relations. Under Jawaharlal Nehru, India adopted a foreign policy rooted in strategic autonomy. During the Cold War, India and Iran were on the opposite sides of the divide. In 1953, Iran's nationalist and democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh was overthrown in a coup that was orchestrated by the CIA under Operation Ajax in coordination with MI6 to protect Western oil interests, and they installed a puppet regime under Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Since India was non-aligned during this period, it largely maintained its distance but never abandoned ties with Iran. It instead chose continuity. During the 1971 war to liberate Bangladesh, a hostile US under President Nixon, with his national security advisor Henry Kissinger, pushed Iran to support Pakistan by providing logistical support and arranging supplies of arms, including fighter jets, missiles, and helicopters. So this episode did put a strain on India-Iran relations. Despite this divergence, India did not cut off engagement with Iran. Instead, it maintained diplomatic continuity, signaling that its relationships would not be dictated by global blocs. The Iranian Revolution of 1979 fundamentally altered Iran's global posture by transforming it into a Shia theocratic state under the Ayatollah that was openly hostile to the West and Israel. Many countries distanced themselves from Iran after the revolution, but India chose to maintain engagement as it was crucial to keep a check on Pakistan. But the Iran-Iraq War of 1980s created a fresh divide. Though officially India took a balanced position during the war, it was alleged that India provided diplomatic and even military support to Saddam Hussein in order to protect its oil supplies from Iraq. This friction led Iran to interfere with India's internal matters, and the Ayatollah was seen making statements against India and even expressing support to Kashmir separatism in the late 80s and early 90s. But in 1994, the very same Iran came to India's rescue at the UN Human Rights Commission by blocking a consensus on Kashmir. This new paradigm was driven by a common threat that emerged in neighboring Afghanistan, that is the rise of the Taliban. Both countries viewed the Taliban as a destabilizing force. For a Shia Iran, a Sunni Taliban was a threat, and for India, Taliban was a puppet of the Pakistani deep state that was enabling anti-India terror groups. So along with Russia, India and Iran gave covert support to the Northern Alliance to counter Taliban. This cooperation was not symbolic. It involved real covert coordination in a conflict environment and marked a significant deepening of strategic ties. So despite few periods of friction and differences, both sides maintained consistent engagement that later laid the foundation for a strategic partnership driven by mutual strategic interests. Under Atal Bihari Vajpayee, India began to view Iran through a geo-economic lens. The idea of developing the Chabahar port gained momentum during this period. Iran was seen as a crucial gateway that would allow India to bypass Pakistan and access Afghanistan and Central Asia. This vision added a long-term strategic dimension to the relationship. The engagement reached a new level under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, as Iran emerged as one of India's top oil suppliers, and Indian companies even explored investments in Iranian oil and gas fields. The proposed Iran-Pakistan-India pipeline was seen as a transformative energy project. However, this period also tested India's diplomatic balancing act. Under pressure from the United States regarding Iran's nuclear program, India voted against Iran at the International Atomic Energy Agency between 2005 and 2009 and eventually stepped away from the IPI pipeline project. Yet, India did not abandon Iran. India continued to invest in the Chabahar port by recognizing its strategic importance. It also devised alternative payment mechanisms to continue oil trade with Iran. These included the use of the Asian Clearing Union and rupee-based payment systems, which allowed India to bypass Western-controlled financial channels. This approach demonstrated a key principle of Indian foreign policy: compliance where necessary, resistance where possible, and continuity at all times. So today, when Iran makes a rare exception for India and grants passage through Hormuz, It is tempting to view this as a singular achievement of the current government. The Modi government does deserve credit for stabilizing ties after the 2019 disruption, for recalibrating engagement and maintaining a careful balance during a period of intense geopolitical conflict. However, it would be incomplete to attribute this outcome solely to recent diplomacy. This moment is the result of cumulative efforts spanning 7 decades. It reflects the strategic autonomy articulated by Nehru, the diplomatic consistency maintained throughout the Cold War and the post 1979 period, the security cooperation of the 1990s as well, and the connectivity vision of the Vajpayee era, along with the economic engagement and balancing strategies of the Manmohan Singh government. See, foreign policy outcomes are rarely the product of a single decision or a single leader. They are built over time through continuity, adaptation, and sustained engagement. The story of India's passage through Hormuz is not just about access, it's about credibility. It shows that despite moments of friction, India has managed to retain its position as a trusted partner across competing geopolitical camps. The larger lesson is simple but powerful. Foreign policy is not about short-term credit. It is about long-term consistency. India's approach has evolved across governments, but its core principle has remained unchanged, which is strategic autonomy guided by national interests. India does not choose any sides. India chooses outcomes. And that is why, even in a divided world, India continues to find space for itself. So the next time you see a headline that India has secured a deal during a global crisis, do not stop at asking who deserves the credit. That question is too simplistic and misses the nuances of foreign policy making. Instead, ask what kind of foreign policy allows a country to remain relevant, respected, and trusted across decades. Because the real story is not just about one government or one leader. It is about a nation that has mastered the art of balancing power without compromising on its core national interests. So what's your take on this? Do you think previous Indian governments also deserve credit, or is it entirely the success of the current Modi government? Let me know your views in the comments. Thanks for watching.